my fellow Americans.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
A functioning democracy? Well, let's have a look at it. It costs $2 billion to become president. They're 25% of the total prisoners in the world. They spend over $800 billion a year on arms, which is more than most of the world put together. They've been at war for 250 years since their state was formed 275 years ago. But they can't afford universal health care. They can't afford the 1.7 trillion debt forgiveness for students. They can't afford a programme for the 17 million children that go to bed hungry. Is this a functioning democracy? What's your idea of a democracy?
know this this is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was a CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals
So
are
do
not
you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you to guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth-makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
Radical colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth. And that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
Well, one of the four principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Time, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he'd gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Time. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists, Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbundu women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted on this Thursday. I'm Clayton Morris. So glad to have you here. Natalie is taking the night off. We got a school event with the kids. So you've got me. You've got Testosterone Thursday. I'm here. David is here. Philip is here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see all of you on this Thursday. We've got a busy show for you because we've got a lot of new developments, specifically in the Nord Stream pipeline story. You know, this is a story that the mainstream media is largely ignoring. Mint News just did a study and found that 20 major publications have totally ignored this story. They want you to be distracted, of course, by the UFO, the balloon story, but we're going to stay laser focused on this story. So Seymour Hersh speaking out exactly why he thinks the Biden administration carried out this attack on the Nord Stream pipeline, and Russia is demanding retaliation and answers. So we will bring you that very latest. We're also going to talk about this anti-war rally because the Rage Against the War Machine rally is about to unfold in Washington, D.C. Tens of thousands of people could descend on the nation's capital. Roger Waters will be speaking there. Our own Dan Cohen will be there speaking. So we're going to look at why America's anti-war movement is basically dead. Can this rally bring it back? We're going to speak with one of the organizers tonight on the show. Also, Hungary. Why is the United States now going after Hungary? Do we not like their opposition to NATO and a whole host of reasons? And why now are also Hungarians, ethnic Hungarians, being brought into fight in Ukraine against Russia? Hungary wants answers. We're going to unpack all of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Welcome, everybody. Hope everyone's doing great here. You can say something. Tell us where you're joining us from in the chat room. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Rumble as well. So please just let us know where you're joining us from around the world. We'd love to hear from you guys. Also, I should mention we have a daily newsletter. You should all subscribe to it. All the kids are doing it. All the cool kids are doing it. You know what they're saying? They're saying, you know what? I want to get rid of social media. I don't want to be on TikTok anymore. I don't want to be on Snapchat. I just want to read the Redacted newsletter. All my friends are doing it. I'm more informed as a result of reading it every morning over my cup of coffee, and you can too. It's totally free. We write it every day. We try to add some humor, but we also try to cover like 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus give you a look at the markets. And all you need to do is go to redacted.inc. That's the website. Put in your email address, and then you'll receive a welcome email. You need to verify your email, though. Otherwise, sorry, you won't receive it. You need to verify it so that Google will let it through. Yahoo will let it through. And then tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning, you'll receive the newsletter over your cup of coffee. You can read it. Again, redacted.inc is the place to go to sign up for the newsletter, and you'll receive it first thing tomorrow morning on Friday morning. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hope everyone is doing well. David, Philip, how you guys doing? Haven't heard a
I'm doing good.
Well.
Yeah.
Everybody's working for the weekend.
That's right. I don't want to call you out, Philip, but the story is, I don't know if I should tell the story. Should we tell the story about Philip?
Go for it. No, I have no shame.
Hey, you're like me.
Hit me with it.
There is no shame on this show. So Philip was admitting in our pre-show that he did a little sleepwalking last night, and he could not, to save his life, he could not find his phone. Couldn't find it anywhere. So David had to call him to locate the phone, and you tracked it down. And where was this phone?
I did. It was in my toilet. Not on my toilet, not near my toilet. It was in my toilet, which to me, because the way sleepwalking works is a bit. I mean, I sometimes wake up on my office floor, or the couch is usually where I'll just wake up and I'm on the couch. I'm like, okay, but yeah. So I apparently
did you locate
at some point
it?
just tossed my phone.
Well.
Was it because you had it on vibrate, or was the ringtone how did you?
Yeah, no, the ringtone was going off when you called, and I was searching around my apartment, and I was like, it sounds like it's in the bathroom. I was like, okay, it must be on the vanity, and I was like, no, and I could hear it in there, and I was like, I looked in the trash can, it wasn't in there, and then I opened up the toilet, and I was like, yep, of course that's where it's at. I don't know why.
Unbelievable. I know, we were saying, were you like Moon Knight in that in that Disney show where he's he wakes up, he's sleepwalking every day, he can't figure out where he's at. That's amazing. That's also a testament to how well that phone is made, that it's you can still receive phone calls while it's in a toilet.
I'm hoping it doesn't I don't have to replace it, but we'll see.
Yeah, just put a charger in there and boom.
Yeah, you can charge your phone overnight in your toilet.
Yeah.
I hope you put it through the dishwasher and clean it off. Sanitize that thing.
Moon Knight gets to go be a superhero while he sleepwalks. I just break my shit.
Yeah, you just break phones in the toilet. So we thought we'd start the show with a little humor today, because we've got a lot of really difficult subjects to talk about on today's show. So thank you for that levity before we get into this. So let's start here. So while the rest of the media is focused on Chinese weather balloons, we're going to stay laser focused on the greatest environmental terrorist attack in world history of all time, by the way. A specifically carried out terrorist attack, an eco-terrorist attack of all time. That is the Biden administration blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline and its direct connection to World War III, which is unfolding before our eyes. We now have an even greater amount of evidence of exactly why President Biden and the overall deep state blew up the pipeline. Now Seymour Hersh speaking out in his first few interviews now since his bombshell report, the legendary reporter, of course, who broke this story. We're going to get to that in a minute. We'll tell you what Sy Hersh has to say about the Biden administration's motivations for all of this. But we now have some brave senators and members of Congress saying that this Nord Stream pipeline explosion could be an impeachable offense. And energy experts saying Europe could be thrown into an energy crisis like we've never seen before, because the real story is not this winter, 2022 into 2023. No, the real story is the winter of 2023 into 2024. And we've been saying that for months on this show, that it's not about, because the reserves may still exist. When you run out and you can't afford them, there are none, and Russia does not send any more to you, we are screwed. And that's exactly what's unfolding as the supplies could be completely gone. But first, the growing concerns of a global war that we want to talk about, the West and its allies against Russia and China. So as Zero Hedge points out this morning, a global war is on our doorstep. A 2022 survey of risk experts at the insurance company AXA and other larger firms paints a pessimistic picture of where the current geopolitical situation could be leading us. Russia's war on Ukraine has raised profound questions about how states interact, eroding norms of international conduct that underpin successful responses to a variety of global risks. And that was just a recent survey. Now major indicators that battle lines are being drawn economically, and mostly around precious minerals and around energy resources, of course. This week, though, Japan announced that it's now going to build up a massive military. Of course, we got these indications at the end of the year, but now the purchase of Tomahawk weapons, etc., from the United States is large. Pacifist Japan unveils unprecedented $320 billion military buildup. Unthinkable, it says, under past administrations. The rapid arming of Japan has the support of 70% of its voters? Sounds like propaganda to me. 70% of Japanese want their country to massively militarize? Okay. And it's illegal, by the way, because the United States said no to both Japan and Germany building up a massive military. Well, that went out the window. First, Germany announced a massive buildup on its own. Now Japan. Japan and Germany are ordering billions of dollars in weapons from the United States. Don't you love how this works, by the way? Like, we tell you, you can't build up your military, and then once we sort of step back and say, why don't you guys go ahead and build up your military? And oh, by the way, we know where you can get these weapons. Just give us a call. We'd be happy to pay for them. We'd be happy to supply them. You pay for them. It's good to have friends that buy all of your crap. And that's exactly what Japan is doing with buying Tomahawks and others. Japan's constitution, specifically, that the United States wrote, the United States sat in and basically helped craft the Japanese constitution after World War II. And it doesn't even recognize a standing military. So the Constitution of Japan does not even recognize them having a military. It's been thrown out the window. That whole plan has been thrown out the window. So now Japan just became the third largest military spender behind the United States and China. It's amazing how that happens overnight. We don't have a military, and then tomorrow we have the third largest in terms of spending. We'll see how large they actually get, because, Japan has an aging population. So where are they going to get all of these young soldiers to be a part of it? Or do they really care, because it's an island nation, so we don't really need soldiers as much as we need massive amounts of weapons?
So what you're saying is currently they are the third largest, but the worst trained.
Yeah, or worse, or, world's largest, but maybe not even have like the actual manpower, like the human beings, right, exactly, as like an in terms of soldiers, boots on the ground infantry training. Of course, the United States is helping with all of this training, and we've been there.
It just blows my mind. Like, what's the end game for all of these countries getting involved in all these wars? They're all having, like, the U.S. is having problems with young people. Like, we have an aging population. Japan has an aging population. What are we going to do with our young people? We're going to go send them out to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that is not helping the situation.
And you see how this is all coming together, right? I mean, you have Japan building up a massive military. You have all of these countries now, a part of the NATO alliance, Western alliance, building up and militarizing. You have Germany militarizing. You have France ramping up as well. So we know what's coming. Like, all of these things are being laid out for a reason. But, this is a really awful reason. The people that fought in World War II think that this is a terrible idea. The people that fought at the Battle of Okinawa, for instance, think that this is a huge mistake. And maybe they know. Maybe they have some idea of what this carnage would look like. This is a bad idea. So this 70% number sounds really fishy to me. Like, 70% of Japanese want to do that? Okay. They probably know a thing or two about this. So the people who have fought in the Battle of Okinawa have an idea about this. Australia.
Is this basically like Cuba, where the United States is in there like doing propaganda to their own people, Yeah,
I don't know about the propaganda piece of this, and maybe anyone watching us from Japan can let us know, like, what sort of American military propaganda, or, you might not see it as American military propaganda. It probably is, Japanese propaganda that's fomented and created by the U.S. to help you with this. It'd be interesting to know, any viewers from Japan, like, what do you guys see in terms of this? Are you being fed this on your newscasts, that you should be scared? You should be scared of China. That's what we want you to believe. And so too is Australia. So this is amazing. Australia is now amassing a large military in preparation of going to war with China. Sky News last night, this is unbelievable. Sky News in Australia, take a look at your screens here. just released a report reminding all Australians why they should militarize against China. A war with China is coming, they say. Watch.
You believe it will be inevitable that there will be forced conflict?
We've got a significantly increased defence.
A once-in-a-generation look at whether our ADF is fit for purpose.
The United States will go to war if necessary in order to protect Taiwan.
Of course, we have alliance obligations. What we don't have is strike capabilities.
The Chinese PLA has 975,000 troops. How long, realistically, could you hold them off?
We will fight as long as it takes.
Victory is anything but assured.
Are we ready for war?
We are acting as quickly as we can.
I pray that they will get it right.
Look at those Chinese missiles aimed right there.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
I love the scary music and everything. I mean, that was
that's like a movie trailer.
Really designed.
Yeah,
that was designed.
I kept waiting for Gerard Butler to show up.
Gerard Butler. Yeah. I mean, get ready, Australia. And I mean, this was a produced documentary from Sky News. You're going to be, Australia will be used as a staging ground, just like Japan will be used as a staging ground for a war with China. We're surrounding China.
Look at the clips that we don't even know. Like, they could have been taken out of context of the Chinese people saying whatever that was they were saying, like we will stand our ground or whatever. Like, where did that come from? Like, there's no context around what they were saying, so they could be just pulling clips from anywhere.
I mean, you really have to dive deep and watch this hour-long documentary, to really see the propaganda. As Caitlin Johnstone reports, yesterday in Australia during a session of the Senate, this is amazing. Senators wanted to know, hey, here in Australia, a small question. We just got a small question. Mind if I ask my little small question here? Are Americans putting nuclear warheads here in Australia? I'm a senator. I'd like to know if there's Americans putting nuclear warheads here in Australia, using us as a staging ground. Seems like a legitimate question. To which the condescending foreign minister, Penny Wong, said, hey, the Americans have a policy of not telling us if they have nuclear weapons based in our own country of Australia. They have a don't ask, don't tell policy. And we should just go along with how America has their don't ask, don't tell policy. This is just one of the most astonishing pieces of video I think I've ever seen. Watch this.
Understood by the United States.
No, I understood that. Thank you, Minister. So, Mr. Moriarty, do I understand it from that answer that Defence doesn't believe that there is a restraint under Australia's current treaty obligations to Australia permitting nuclear-armed B-52 bombers to be present in Australia, provided it's not a permanent presence? Is that
no,
what
the
I'm
statement you're reading more.
answer?
The statement says there is no impediment under this treaty or the NPT to the visit of foreign aircraft to Australian airfields or transit in Australian airspace.
Yes, but the critical question here, Minister, is whether or not they carry nuclear weapons.
Well, and the critical, the responsible way of handling this is to recognise that the US has a neither confirm nor deny position, which we understand and respect. So, we are not. I know you want to make a political point.
No, I don't want to make it. I just want to answer.
Yes, you do. But we are not.
No, I really just want to answer.
Let me finish, please.
Please let the Minister finish.
We are not in a position to go further than what Mr. Moriarty has just gone. Now, that puts us at a disadvantage because then you can get into a whole range of our hypotheticals, which you are doing. I don't actually think it's particularly responsible or fair to the Australian community, because I think you would be sensible enough to understand what Mr. Moriarty is saying.
So just shut up. Don't ask any questions. America is using Australia as a launching pad for its coming war with China, and they've got nuclear weapons here in our own backyard. But how condescending of you to ask a question like that.
Which makes them a legitimate legal nuclear target in the event of nuclear war.
Yeah.
To which they have to rely on us to respond. I mean,
exactly.
That's nice of us.
Yeah, we're there to help in any way that we can. So that's what friends do. And by the way,
maybe that's all that was happening in Cuba too. Like when they had the missile crisis there, maybe that's all they were doing. They just wanted to have them there just in case. and don't ask questions. Like,
yeah, we're just
we didn't
using
ask
it as
any
a
questions,
launching
right?
pad. We didn't ask any
Didn't bother
questions
us.
at all. So, and she says it's really irresponsible for the Australian people. Him asking a question about that is insensitive to the Australian people. Just be blue-pilled. Just ignore it. Don't take a red pill. Just keep being blue-pilled, Australia, and just totally ignore it. And today, we've gotten some greater evidence of exactly why President Biden and the deep state destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline. Seymour Hersh finally did a deeper dive interview upon his original reporting on his Substack, which proved that the U.S. carried out the Nord Stream attack, planned at the deep state level using U.S. Navy divers, trained at a near CIA facility in Florida to go and carry out this attack. Why did President Biden blow up the Nord Stream pipeline? Driving Germany into chaos and most of Europe into chaos. Now they're buying our natural gas for 5 times the price. It's a brilliant move, isn't it? Take away their cheap energy. So here's what Seymour Hersh had to say about the motivation for the Biden administration. Watch.
Here's what Biden did, and this is what I think the ultimate point of the story and why so many people, even the intelligence community, are very troubled by it. What he did is he said, I'm in a big war with Ukraine. It's not looking good. I want to be sure I get German and West European support, and I know winter's coming, and if it's going to be bad, I don't want the Germans to say we got to check out because we're getting massacred. We'll be massacred with no cheap fuel, and our economy will go bonkers. We're going to check out and we're going to open up the gas line, which they could do. So he took away that option.
So keep Germany and Europe in the war against Ukraine, or in Ukraine against Russia, by blowing up their source of natural gas, because Europe has no natural resources to speak of. They have to either get it from Russia, they have to get it from the United States, they have to get it from, they don't have any oil, right? Or natural gas. They have to get it from us or Russia. So by taking away that leverage, now you're forcing them to be on our side. You're basically saying, hey, you're going to get natural gas from us. You'll pay 5 times as much. You need to stay in this fight. Don't you dare think about like backing off, staying out of Ukraine against Russia. We need you in this. That was the motivation. That's the motivation to keep them in this. He also says this could be the end of NATO. Seymour Hersh does. Now, that is very similar to what Colonel Douglas Macgregor has said on our show about the death of NATO on the horizon. Because think about it, right? The idea of NATO is, first of all, it's a defensive organization. That's what they say. Number 2, it's meant to keep, I got your back, right? Like, I've got your back. I'm going to protect my friend. I'm going to protect my allies. That's the idea. So instead, we destroyed NATO because of destroying the Nord Stream pipeline. Because now what we're saying is, we don't have your back, allies. We're literally going to take away your way of life, destroy your energy infrastructure. That's what bullies do. That's not what allies do. And so you're starting to see some real fracturing occurring in Europe right now around this Nord Stream pipeline. Just watching it unfolding in Germany right now, and you're seeing calls for major investigations inside of Germany about this. Wow, finally. What do we know? Why was the United States allowed to? Who in Germany knew about this, by the way? Who went along with this in Germany? Was it green eco-terrorists people who were actively involved in this with the United States? Did they know about this? Or was it just the United States working alone or working with Norway on this, as Seymour Hersh reports?
Well, and that's why it's so important to share videos like this, because it is independent journalism now that is bringing this stuff to light, because we can't count on the mainstream anymore. And the only reason a lot of people know about this is because of independent journalists like Seymour, like this channel. So that's why it's so important that you guys share these videos, because the information is getting out and it is being heard, because big channels and stuff watch this or promote it. So it's important. If you can't support in other ways, sharing it is very important.
Right, because now we're starting to see some moves, and politicians are starting to talk openly about this in a way that they have been quiet for months on this. So thanks to Seymour Hersh's reporting, and thanks to all of you for sharing this story and drawing awareness to it, pushing out information, sharing articles about Nord Stream, to me is the biggest story in a decade. I mean, since 9/11. And it's been swept under the rug by the mainstream media. So now you're starting to see the rumblings from members of Congress calling for impeachment and talking openly about this being an impeachable offense for President Biden, going around Congress to carry out a war crime, a terrorist attack on the energy infrastructure of Europe without congressional approval. For what? We're not in a war with Russia. What did you do? You literally attacked a pipeline that's owned, by the way, over less than 49% of it is owned by Western European countries. European companies.
And with our military elite. I mean, that's like, you're making our military complicit now.
Right. You're using taxpayer dollars in the military to go carry out a terrorist attack. The very thing we stood against after 9/11, right? It's the idea we stand against these types of things. So Senator Mike Lee says this likely rises to the level of an impeachable offense. Listen.
The answer to this question, if it turns out that the United States was responsible, has very dire consequences. And I'm not even talking yet about what happens within our government, what the consequences there might be. But does this rise
to more than an impeachable offense?
Quite possibly, yes. I believe it does. Because if you go to such great lengths to engage in an attack, a provocative offensive attack on a near-peer nuclear-armed geopolitical adversary, and you do so in a manner that violates our Constitution, because that's, as I see it anyway, it seems to me like an act of war.
Yeah.
Last I checked, war can't be just declared, just decided by a president. And sure, I know clandestine operations happen. Discrete military strikes are something different than something provocative on this scale that inevitably lead to, and in fact are, war.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, leading to World War III. So today, Russia calling for a UN emergency meeting and a full investigation. We'll see now what the United Nations does on this. Will they ignore it like the mainstream media has ignored it? And now the mainstream media is being forced to pay attention to it. And members of Congress are being approached and asked about this. And here's what you can do. Every one of you watching right now, you can send a letter to your member of Congress. You can go to their email. You can get on the phone. It takes 2 minutes. Get on the phone and call your representatives' offices and say, we want answers about this Nord Stream pipeline explosion. And did the United States you need to push for a hearing on this, because they can call for a hearing, a congressional hearing on this. And this would be, move towards the level of moving towards impeachment proceedings on this. Not every member of Congress, though, is on board. Activists confronted yesterday New York Representative Richie Torres, saying Sy Hersh just released the fact that the United States blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Are you going to guys put together a hearing on this? This is an important thing. The president carried out a terrorist attack. Are you guys going to call for a hearing? Here is his response.
Sy Hersh just released the fact that the United States blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. You weren't briefed on that. Why not? Are you going to put a congressional probe into that? Yes or no? Because this ain't no ordinary journalist. You know that.
So,
I want to hear what he has to say.
Nord Stream is a pipeline that transfers oil from Europe, particularly from Russia to Germany. So we don't have the authority to investigate pipelines.
All right, come on. Now that's bullshit. You know that. Victoria Nuland herself says she's happy that it's a pile of metal underwater. Do you share her sentiment?
Here's what we know. The Europeans are conducting an investigation.
They investigated her.
And it is true.
Why did Joe Biden say that we are going to get rid of the Nord Stream pipeline? And when asked, but wait a minute, that's run by Gazprom in Germany, how are you going to do it? He said,
We'll be able to do it.
If you have definitive evidence,
yeah, we do. It's called Seymour Hersh.
then produce the evidence.
He already
You already produced the evidence. Read the article.
Listen, this is Seymour Hersh. This is the My Lai massacre. Okay, this is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. He is not going to publish something he can't prove. So unless you're naive enough and you don't know that, I'm here to inform you. I'm at least asking for congressional inquiry into whether or not it's true, because his credibility alone should prompt that. Don't.
Yeah. Oh boy, wouldn't you think
that gave me goosebumps?
It really did. Like here he is, and what was amazing is actually to hear all those voters in that room sitting there saying, no, Europe has already conducted an investigation. Like they already have the answers. Like Sweden already did.
Because generally,
they know who did it.
Look how many times we've seen somebody like that standing up and then everybody's like, shut up, and then they get dragged out.
Right.
This was like they all were informed.
And they were like clapping. They're like, yeah. And they knew about it. They knew about it. They know who Sy Hersh is. They know what the evidence is in his report. And by the way, it should be verifiable. You can literally go through the facts that he lays out and confirm or deny each of the items in there. Oh, Navy divers being trained at this facility? Which Navy divers were involved in this? We should be able to find out specifically through a congressional hearing who was involved in this. All of it. And so, you know, again, this is one of the worst mistakes in U.S. history. I think this is one of the biggest political blunders of all time to do something like this. And now you're going to see, you basically killed NATO, your friends, your allies, and you're pushing us to the brink of nuclear war, perhaps. And we don't have any kind of a congressional hearing yet. So I'm hoping, guys, just please, send a letter, get on the phone, just send a simple email to your representative. It's easy to find your district. Go online if you live in the United States and send it. And if you live in Europe and other places, call for an investigation in Europe. Call for hearings, public hearings. Like, we cannot allow this kind of stuff to stand. This deep state that gets away with this stuff and thinks that because if they get away with this, think what else they can get away with. Like, we have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. So that's what I'll say on that.
Well, and just one more thing, like it's one thing to get by with this stuff using secret military like we do so many times, but we used our military, and that makes it that's a provocation of war. Right. The secret things are as well, but we can argue that's outside of the purview, right? This was an order that had to come down from a general, it had to go down a chain of command to our military.
Yeah. Our commander-in-chief had to sign off on this in order to use the U.S. Navy. We've got more news to get to here on this Thursday. Coming up on the show, we are going to go after and talk about this anti-war rally. We are vehemently anti-war on this show, so there's a big rally this weekend in Washington, D.C. The Rage Against the War Machine rally. Roger Waters will be there, or Dan Cohen will be there. There's going to be a lot of great speakers who will be speaking there at this war rally in D.C. We're going to be speaking with one of the organizers of this war, and why he says America almost has no anti-war movement anymore. It's been eradicated. We'll get into that, because I want to know why. Like, where's the anti-war movement? Has it just been bought off by the military-industrial complex? Let me know in the chat why you think America has no anti-war movement anymore. It's gone. Are we just so unplugged from it? It's just all a proxy war. We don't see it on our televisions anymore. We just don't think about it. But we are actively in like 9 wars right now. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We're also going to look at what's going on in Syria. Syria is an absolute devastation, is in ruins tonight. And United States Western sanctions are keeping it that way, where we can't get medical supplies, can't get food, can't get energy to help the people. We're going to be speaking with Syrian journalist Kevork Almasian, who has been basically up for 11 days now, 10 days without sleep. His family is in Aleppo, an area just devastated by this earthquake. So we'll be speaking with him. But first, let's tell you about our friends at ScoreMaster. Charging higher interest rates is how banks make a lot of money. And even if the interest rates at the federal level aren't as high, they can still crank them up to make some more money. They make a lot more. And we have banks right now who are making record profits. The bankers this week actually just came out and said, hey, we don't feel so bad about the economy. We're doing pretty well. Oh, yeah, great. Because they're making money off of your misery. basically. ScoreMaster is the new science in accelerating your credit score. Puts you in control of your money, not the bank. So if your credit score is like, say, 650 points and you're borrowing $500,000 to refinance your home, if you start at ScoreMaster, it could save you over $75,000 in interest payments over the life of your loan. That's $75,000 in your pocket, not the bank's pocket. That's the genius behind ScoreMaster, because their credit scientists have actually figured out ways to increase your credit score dramatically, in just a short amount of time, anywhere from 30 to 100 points in just about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. So before you apply for any loan, any auto lease or credit, start at ScoreMaster. Visit scoremaster.com/redacted. Use that URL, scoremaster.com/redacted, for your special 7-day trial. Again, start your special 7-day trial. It's waiting for you. Scoremaster.com/redacted. Well, the escalation in the war in Ukraine is getting worse by the minute, not better. It seems instead of calling for peace, there is additional escalation that's moving us closer to nuclear war. And there's a big event that's being held in Washington, D.C. called the Rage Against the War Machine, which will be held on February 19th. One of the organizers of that event is Nick Brana, who is joining us now on the show. Nick, welcome to the show. We are vehemently anti-war on this show. When I heard you were putting this event together, I said, we've got to get you guys on the show to get the word out as much as possible. So thank you so much for what you're doing, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us on, Clayton.
So what was the impetus for this event? What was maybe the moment that you said, we need to mobilize, we need to bring people to the nation's capital, and we need to really bring awareness about this?
I think it was the progression of the war and the fact that it's become increasingly clear that this is not, in fact, even a proxy war, but it is a direct war between the United States and Russia. That is now what the Ukrainian defense minister has said, that they are fighting the war on behalf of NATO. The logistics, the weapons, the targeting, the strategy, everything comes from NATO. And also you have that being said also by the Russian defense minister. You have it increasingly said in the West. You have, of course, the German foreign minister that is saying that that they were at war with Russia and speaking on behalf of Germany, but also on behalf of all of Europe when she makes that comment, all of Western Europe. So it's that escalation and the fact that, of course, there are now red lines that are being crossed that were initially drawn by including the Biden administration, the most pro-war, warmongering factions of the U.S. government, that is, of course, the aggressor in this conflict. The fact that just a few months ago, they were saying to send tanks, are you crazy? That would be a third world war. And yet here we are with tanks being deployed from the United States, from many different countries across Europe, including most absurdly and ironically, Germany, being deployed from Germany. Who thought that we would see German tanks again being deployed towards Russia to fight Russia? I think people don't understand that 27 million Russians died defeating the first Nazi regime in Europe. And the idea that Russia was simply going to tolerate the establishment of another one with a 30-nation transatlantic military alliance behind it that is shipping it tens of billions of dollars, $100 billion plus in weapons and military aid, that it was going to tolerate that they were going to tolerate the induction of Ukraine into NATO, the placement of missiles that could strike nuclear missiles, cruise missiles that could strike Russian cities, including Moscow, in just 3, 4, 5 minutes. That is absurd. People have to understand that Russia has been invaded from the West several times, and that invasion path goes through Ukraine. There is a historic generational memory in Russia of the First World War, the Second World War, what was done to them during the 90s with the absolute devastation, the fact that Russia's domestic product crashed by 50% with the Yeltsin administration that was essentially installed by the United States. That's why Putin has a 70, 80% favorability rating while fighting this war. And that's why he calls it existential. And it's not just Putin, it's all of Russia, it's the Kremlin that agrees with this. No Western country, the United States, the UK, any country in Western Europe could draft hundreds of thousands of people to fight a war without facing a revolution. And yet you see that the leadership in Russia is able to do that because they correctly have assessed, with the agreement of the Russian people, that this is an existential war being waged by the United States, the UK, and all of NATO against them, with the explicit goal of balkanizing Russia, of cutting it up into multiple different countries, and deposing their leadership. If that happened in the United States, there would be a nuclear war tomorrow.
I hope that people clip what you just said and share it everywhere, because that was the most poignant, spot-on assessment of what's been happening. And you're right about these red lines. I think about what was said at the beginning and the outset of this special military operation, which was, we would never send tanks, we would never send jets, we would never send American personnel. That is, of course, a bridge too far. We would never send long-range heavy weapons. We would never send HIMARS. We would never do these things. And at each instance, all of those red lines have been passed. And now what's left? What's the final red line? Troops on the ground? And of course, we're hearing that that is being pushed now by NATO. We've heard that from Jens Stoltenberg. We've heard that from other members of NATO. We've heard that from an admiral whose name escapes me at the moment, talking about potential troops and facing Russian forces head on. That's the next step. And each line they've crossed, what's left for us to think that they're not going to cross this next line?
You're absolutely right. That now they're normalizing the jets, they're normalizing the troops. In fact, they're even normalizing the idea of fighting a nuclear war over this conflict. There is an increasing school of thought that says, well, Russia just has to be defeated at all costs. And if that means that we're going to fight a nuclear war, so be it. When the mayor of Kiev was at the WEF, he was interviewed in this incredible interview, and he was asked the question, why do an increasing number of people in the United States and the West are asking, is it worth it to fight a nuclear war over Ukraine, especially given the fact that this is a NATO US provoked war? And without missing a beat, the mayor of Kiev, who is this U.S. CIA State Department puppet, essentially, said it's worth it because if we don't do that, Russia is next going to invade Poland, and then they're going to invade Romania, and then they're going to come and conquer all of the Western world. Who believes that? Nobody believes that. Just look at the damn map. Which bloc has come towards the other, has encircled the other over the past 3 decades since the end of the Cold War. Look at the map and you see that it's the expansion of NATO right up to the border of Russia, something that the United States promised would not happen to Gorbachev in the 90s as a condition of reunifying Germany and ending the Cold War. That was violated by every U.S. president. And when you look at it, now we have NATO doubling in size, coming right up to the border of Russia.
So this event on the 19th, can you tell us about where people can go if they want to come to D.C., watch it, be a part of it? Can you give us a little insight into how this event will unfold, this Rage Against the War Machine rally?
Absolutely. We've come together with the Libertarian Party, Action for Assange, World Beyond War, many different partner organizations in a kind of urgent emergency mobilization in the United States to come together, bring together the largest rally since the protesting war, since the Iraq War. That's what it's going to be, because that's what this moment requires. That's what this world war requires. We have to stop it before it goes nuclear, which is what will happen if there is no resistance. The only thing that is going to prevent this kind of escalation that we talked about from happening is if thousands of people get in the streets, as they did during the Vietnam War, as they did during the Iraq War, and we show that we are not going to tolerate the fact that $100 billion of our taxpayer money is going towards this war. We're not going to tolerate losing our civil liberties for these wars anymore. We're not going to tolerate the fact that we're killing hundreds of thousands of people in Ukraine and have killed hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, in Vietnam, with these endless wars. We're in a place, Clayton, where the military industrial complex is consuming whatever remains of the American economy. Half of our discretionary spending now goes to the military. So on February 19th, thousands of people are going to come together. We are going to rally at the Lincoln Memorial. Tulsi Gabbard's going to be there. Dennis Kucinich is going to be there. Jimmy Dore is going to be there. Ron Paul is going to be there. It's going to be an incredible lineup. Chris Hedges. We have about 20 different amazing speakers from all across the political spectrum, left and right and everywhere in between, are coming together and saying to stop a war is not, this war and nuclear war is not a left-right issue. It's a human issue. It's an existential issue. After the rally, we're going to be marching to the White House, and we're going to deliver our demands directly to that demented warmonger, Joe Biden.
And what has the media response been like? You know, I imagine the New York Times will be there, the Washington Post will be there, all of the major broadcast networks will be there. They will have their cameras set up, just like it's the inaugural address, right? President Biden out there on the dais, about to give his speech and taking up the second inaugural address. You'll have all of the mainstream media will be there covering this event, right?
You would think that would be the reaction to a declaration of world war, right? When we have nuclear weapons. But the media has abandoned the people of the United States. They've abandoned the people of the world, and they've betrayed them to a degree that is almost equal or only equal to the politicians in the United States and to the military industrial complex. They used to say that the revolution would not be televised. Apparently, the Third World War is not going to be televised until the nukes are flying, because the media and the political class have so betrayed people in this country and across the West and around the world. They almost never talk about the war. And when they do, it's straight up propaganda. It's straight up propaganda about how Putin is the devil and Russia is hell-bent on, building this, the new Soviet Union, which there's no evidence for. And that's the only thing that you hear. And so, of course, all the media we've heard from the media, to the extent that they've covered it at all, is attacks. All they've done is attack the rally, try to create one division over another. And it's very strategic. It's very strategic. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised, given the history of Operation Mockingbird, given the history of media manipulation by the CIA, if in fact there is intelligence involved, because the attacks are constantly, very strategically attempting to break up the coalition, which is that of one across left and right. So that's the only reaction. Heavens forbid they actually cover the fact that there are billions of lives at stake, that hundreds of thousands of people have already died, that the Ukrainians are essentially just cannon fodder in this war, as are the Russians. None of that apparently is anything that they care about.
No, it's absolutely coordinated. We see it on a regular basis with the intelligence state. It's amazing to watch the Associated Press, the mainstream media outlets, Reuters, the BBC, almost parrot the exact same talking points within a 24-hour time period when we have an alleged, an alleged Russian war crime or something like that, which then gets later debunked a week or so later. But as Mark Twain would say, a lie makes its way around the world before truth has a chance to put on its pants. So you have the Associated Press, you have the BBC, you have Reuters, you have these news organizations coming out with these reports with unnamed sources almost immediately. And it's clearly, look, I don't want to be terribly cynical, but it looks clearly coordinated from some sort of intelligence component of all of this.
Look at what happened when the Ukrainian missile struck Poland. There was a straight 24 hours where they were talking about, as if it was a certainty, that Russia had bombed a NATO country, triggering Article 5. World War III was trending all across Twitter, and then of course that was, there's different perspectives. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that it was a deliberate provocation from a Ukrainian Zelensky regime, despotic regime, that knows that it's losing this war and has repeatedly stated that it wants a preemptive nuclear strike on Russia and is trying to drag other countries into the conflict, is trying to trigger Article 5. And so I think that's the kind of thing that we need to look for right now, Clayton. And I know you've talked about it. I talked about it recently with Kim Iverson. A lot of people are talking about it. And the more attention that we can bring to it, the better. And that is the fact that when you look at our history, all the way back to the Spanish-American War, the First World War, the Second World War, there is a sense, especially in the United States, Americans are generally very reluctant to fight wars. And of course, the United States is the dominant, the preeminent aggressor in this war. But that's why there always is a false flag or some kind of action that is used to gin up jingoism and hysteria that is then turned towards a war and used to justify the next escalation, the escalations that the American people would otherwise say, hell no. And so look for that kind of thing right now. Look for it to justify the deployment of F-16s, the creation of a no-fly zone, the deployment of troops. They're sending, what you have going on right now is that the CIA and the military-industrial deep state is essentially deploying its number one favorite errand boy, David Petraeus, to go deliver its message on the Sunday shows on ABC, a crazy message. The things that he's talking about is that Putin should be assassinated, he should be deposed, the country should be broken up. So look for that kind of thing. And now he's talking about a coalition of the willing. So look to that guy if you want an indication of where the kind of, military industrial deep state is going. And what they're talking about now is a coalition of the willing of countries that are going to send troops that are going to invade Ukraine from the West and directly confront Russian soldiers.
Yep, it's coming. It's coming. And thank you guys for what you're doing. So the event is happening on the 19th of February. That's a Sunday in Washington, D.C. People can go to, what's the web address? We'll have it linked up in the description if people want to come to D.C., if they want to watch it, be a part of it, donate, get the message out.
It's rageagainstwar.com. Come stand up to the military-industrial complex with us, because nothing other than people power is going to stop this war.
Well said. Nick, thank you for what you're doing. I hope that's a big success. We will be promoting it heavily here on Redacted. And thank you again for joining us here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Clayton. And thank you for the clarity that you lend to this war and this crisis at your channel.
So thank you so much, Nick. And the website, again, is rageagainstwar.com. You can go there and check it out. And you can also see, you can see all the stuff. You can donate right there. You can see the different speakers who are involved. You can buy some different clothing as well. Check them out. So again, rageagainstwar.com. So our thanks to them for doing what they're doing. It's unbelievable, really, isn't it? That we don't have an anti-war movement in the United States anymore. You just think about the images, right, from the 1960s and into the 1970s. People trying to get us out of Vietnam and these proxy wars, and where has it gone?
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Like, you look at Vietnam, you had videos, you had like the caskets coming out, you saw the pictures, you saw the reality of war. The Gulf War, they had tons of videos and everything, you saw the reality. And then in Desert Storm, they're like, no more videos, no more pictures. And so now any other war that we're into, it's all textual, it's all easy to manipulate, and anybody that shows videos or anything are silent. So it's like they've made it so that they can propagandize them easier because they don't have video evidence. Because we've learned, when Desert Storm, when WikiLeaks released the videos of what was actually going on, again, we rose up because we realized what was going on. So they just try harder and harder to hide what's actually going on in war.
Yeah, they don't allow anymore to. There's been not whistleblowers, but journalists who were in Iraq covering it, and were told by the U.S. military, you can't film that, you can't film that. And of course, you had those embedded reporters who would go out and cover those stories. But they're literally propagandists because they're being embedded with military units and being shown things that they're allowed to see and cover. You're not allowed to film that. If you do, we will confiscate your tapes on the way out, which is exactly what happened.
Just watch. You ever see the movie Three Kings with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg?
Right, yeah.
Like, that's a really good movie that shows the embedded journalists and how they were told, like, where they could go and all that. And there was, like, burnings and stuff, like, you know, the burning piles. They're like, stay away from that. You know, don't go to that
film
story.
that. Don't film that.
Here's a good story. We're going to set you up and put you with a colonel, and you're going to run around with him, and he's going to tell you what you need to know.
And we also don't show flag draped coffins coming down at Dover Air Force Base either. Like, we don't show that anymore like we used to. We don't show that. Keep that off television. So it is sanitized. It's totally sanitized. We've got more news to get to here on your Thursday. We're going to be looking at the latest in Syria. Again, Americans aren't being told the truth about what's happening in Syria. They're not getting to see the images of it. They've been lied to for years about this country. If you're educated, and like you guys are who watch this show, you know that you're being lied to about Syria. So we really, really encourage you to watch our interview. We're going to have Kevork Almasian, who's going to be joining us. His family is in Aleppo, which has been just destroyed. And so we'll have that coming up for you in a moment. And Senator Josh Hawley out with a new proposal. Should we ban social media for kids? And boy, I got to say, I think that this is a brilliant idea. I love it. I really do. We'll get into a deep discussion about it. But boy, I've been reading a couple of books lately on this. Reading a most recent book on young boys because my son is 12, so I want to understand, you know, what he's going through and all the science about that. So it's called Decoding Boys by a pediatrician. She's excellent doctor, and boy, just how damaging social media is to our children. I am absolutely, and you know, you think about it as a psychological operation too, right? We hear that about TikTok and these other things. So we'll get into a debate about that. And we're going to hear from Senator Josh Hawley in just a bit. But first, it's no secret. If you're tuned in, then you know experts are predicting a recession is headed our way big time. And we're, as many experts already believe, we're already in the middle of it here because we just saw inflation numbers go up again in January. The numbers came out and the White House tried to spin them, but it's not true. They're not real. In fact, inflation went up in January. That means the price of groceries going up, the price of gas going up. Energy prices through the roof. And Jim Rickards, of course, former CIA, former at the Pentagon, turned basically whistleblower about how this government screws us over, saying we are in for a brutal next 75 days. He believes over the next 75 days, we're going to see shit really hit the fan. So one way to protect yourself right now, and this is why China is buying up so much gold, is with precious metals to protect yourself, your family. And one way you can do that is with gold and silver and using a self-directed IRA. And now, if you're interested in gold, Lear Capital will actually help you start purchasing precious metals inside of your self-directed IRA. It can grow tax-free. That means when you take the profits out of it, when you're 59 and a half years old, you don't pay any taxes on it. Yes, it can grow tax-free. So you can convert an old IRA that you've got laying around, an old 401k that you have laying around, into a gold and silver IRA. Call Lear Capital today. Here's their 800 number. It's on your screen, 1-800-613-3557. We'll also have links in the description as well. Again, 1-800-613-3557. You can also go to LearRedacted.com to get your free gold and silver investors guide and receive up to $15,000 in free bonus metals with a qualified purchase. Again, 1-800-613-3557 or go to LearRedacted.com. All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about Hungary. So Russia is not the only country with grievances about Ukraine. Turns out Hungary and Romania, two allied countries with the West, are also accusing the country of persecuting ethnic groups living in Ukraine. So Hungarians living in Ukraine, Romanians living in Ukraine. They're saying that Ukraine is persecuting these people, forcibly conscripting them into the military service. Hey, we know you're not Ukrainian, but you better suit up, buddy. We need you to go after Putin. You need you to go to the front lines because the Ukrainian army has been devastated. And now they're rounding up people on the streets. The Ukrainian army is pretty much gone. So what we need is people who are not Ukrainian now, we're going to round you up if you're living in Ukraine. It doesn't matter. We're taking ethnic Hungarians and ethnic Romanians and throwing them into the grinder. Now, the Council of Europe's Venice Commission is going to investigate Ukraine for violations of minority rights. Here's the headline. Kyiv's treatment of minorities to be investigated in Budapest. Ukraine has stripped the language rights of more than 150,000 Hungarians living in its territory. That had happened a few months ago. Now, and this all happened, of course, when Ukraine's borders were redrawn. It became home to around 156,000 ethnic Hungarians and 150,000 ethnic Romanians. You drew a new border around where they lived. 250,000 Moldovans. And of course, many hundreds of thousands of ethnic Russians, which we know about them in the Donbass. The way that they thanked them for living there is to attack them in a genocide for the last 9 years. And in Crimea. They had been permitted to learn and speak in their native tongues. They could speak Romanian if they wanted to. They could speak Hungarian if they wanted to, up until December. And now, President Zelensky has passed a law under the Ukrainian government mandating that Ukrainian be spoken in all areas of public life, including schools. So forget your Hungarian roots, get out of it. Recent reports have emerged of forced military transcriptions of people in these ethnic communities. Here's the headline. EU state slams Kyiv over brutal military draft from ethnic minority. Budapest's foreign minister has blasted Ukraine's conscription of Transcarpathian Hungarians. Ethnic Hungarians living in Ukraine are being enrolled in its armed forces to fight Russia. They say it's not our war, but it hurts Hungarians, the Hungarian people, he says. And they want this resolved swiftly. He says, unfortunately, peace is rarely spoken about, and those who talk about it are even stigmatized and criticized, the top Hungarian diplomat says. The report from the Council of Europe is due to come out this summer, and the foreign minister says that if this is not resolved, Hungary will take the issue to the European Court of Human Rights. So, there's videos have been emerging online too of you're seeing Ukrainians beating people in the streets, forcing them to conscript and become part of the military. So that's good. Like, here's what you want to fight for us. We're going to make you fight for us. So just to be clear, Hungary is a NATO country that doesn't want Sweden to join NATO. They're calling out Ukraine's bullshit about conscripting ethnic Hungarians to fight in a NATO proxy war. The West already doesn't like Viktor Orban, the prime minister of Hungary, who just won a sweeping re-election. This is starting to sound like the perfect soup base to push for regime change in Hungary, does it not? Can you start to hear the rumbling sounds of regime change in Hungary? Wait a second, Hungary opposes NATO in the West? Too bad they don't have a pipeline we could blow up. Because we would. So instead, what we'll do is we'll try to push Viktor Orban out of power. That's exactly what the U.S. is starting to do and push for in Hungary. Last week, U.S. aid, which is has an operating budget of $27 billion, which is more than most countries, by the way. U.S. aid sent Samantha Power to Hungary to start stirring up some stuff in order to lay the groundwork for regime change in Hungary. So here's U.S. aid. It's responsible for, the mission of U.S. aid is to help countries become more democratic, and we're going to help them. Like, they're responsible for administrating civilian aid and development assistance to help them become more democratic. To become more like the United States is our goal, is the mission of U.S. aid. So instead of sending Samantha Power to Ukraine, So instead of sending Samantha Power to Ukraine, let me put a harder point on that part. So instead, she's going to Hungary. So instead of sending her to Ukraine, which is the most corrupt government in Europe, and is well documented even before the war, as taking away individual freedoms. Like, here's the headline from The Guardian. state-controlled media, state control of just about everything, clamping down on your ability to worship as a Christian, media censorship, taking away language rights. Here's how The Guardian puts it. Welcome to Ukraine, the most corrupt nation in Europe. Of course, this was before the war. Now it's even more corrupt. But this was before the war. And now we can't even, the mainstream media is ignoring the fact that Ukraine's the most corrupt country in Europe. Ukraine could learn a lot from how to create a democracy by having Samantha Power show up in its country, but instead they sent her to Hungary to stir up some shit. Here's how Samantha Power from USAID explains what she's doing in Hungary all of a sudden. It's so mysterious that she's suddenly in Hungary, isn't it? So here she is there on Valentine's Day. During my trip to Budapest, I spoke with Hungarians about USAID's new support for locally driven initiatives to support civil society and independent media, and how we can work together on key challenges to democracy and securing respect for the rights and dignity of all people. She actually says that. It's actually pretty funny. The United States lecturing Hungary about democracy and rights for all people. The United States, which just destroyed Europe's cheap fuel pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline, you destroyed your NATO allies' pipeline. So these are your friends, whom you call friends, members of NATO, and you destroyed their way of life. You carry out proxy wars all over the world. You hold draconian sanctions against Syria so earthquake victims can't get food or health care. You detonate a train in East Palestine, Ohio, and render a city useless. And the government is nowhere to be found in that city to help its people. People lining up in a big meeting last night in an auditorium demanding answers from their government they won't give. So then you can tell, and you give, now they're drinking like polluted drinking water on top of it. You get to lecture Hungary about democracy and treating people well? And independent media? When you guys have literally been caught red-handed infiltrating media and working in collusion with social media companies to censor voices? Like, this is the most hypocritical thing I've heard this week. And the week's not over yet, by the way. I love this. I mean, it's crazy. It's funny, actually. Hungary, in many ways, is more advanced and more democratic than the United States on a whole host of categories. You can go down the list, actually. It's pretty funny. So Samantha Power released a video to show exactly how she's spreading democracy in Hungary. Watch.
I came to Budapest to discuss USAID's new support for the Hungarian people. But I also underscored that the United States wants to work more closely with Hungary. A central component of this work is making progress together on addressing some key challenges to democracy and helping secure respect for the rights and dignity of all people. I sat down with members of independent media and civil society organizations that are dedicated to promoting the rule of law and exposing corruption here in Hungary. The U.S. government is committing $20 million to bolster civil society, to help independent media thrive and reach new audiences, and to support community-led initiatives that can empower local groups trying to make change. We are looking forward to working with the Hungarian people in building the future they want.
AKA the future we want. I mean, we're going to spend $20 million to literally create regime change in Hungary. I mean, can you guys see right through this garbage now? Please, please, please. It's hilarious. I mean, the U.S. is literally laying the groundwork to overthrow the Hungarian leadership. That's exactly what's happening here.
Well, and it's like, how many these promotional videos just drive me insane, because it's like they send a marketing team over there. They set up to try to get the best shots, how can we really draw emotion? Take a selfie with the crowd. This crowd doesn't know who the heck this lady is. It's like, hey, she's taking a selfie. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's such propaganda. Like, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you know, here's the thing, right? The U.S. is going to pay for a big dinner for everyone. So this is, the U.S. is putting on a little fancy propaganda dinner. Do you want to come for a free dinner that the U.S. is paying for? Sure, I'll go. What the heck? I haven't had a good meal in a while, so sure, I'll go and have a good, get some college kids together and we'll go have a good fancy meal on the U.S. AIDS dollar. That's how these happen. Get a room full of people so the U.S. can tell you how to live your life. So Aaron Mate sees it. He sees it. He says, he tweeted this: if you bet on regime change campaign kicking off in Hungary, your odds just drastically improved, on Samantha Power's tweet. Exactly. Here's Arnaud Bertrand. He tweets, this is absolute meddling, which, by the way, runs completely contrary to the UN principles of non-interference, just in case international law still means anything to a rules-based order advocates. So how long until we're really hearing about, oh man, Hungary is corrupt, more corruption. We're here to stamp out corruption in Hungary. So we really got to push for a regime change in Hungary. That's coming to Europe near you. Just keep your eyes on it. Remember that you heard it here first or second. We'll be covering that. We've got more news to get to here on this Thursday. We're going to be covering what's going on in Syria and how that country is in ruins at this hour. And Western sanctions, even though they're lifting part of it, is not enough. In fact, the part that they're lifting is just a joke, really, to save face. Kevork Almasian is a Syrian journalist whose family has been caught in this devastation, is going to be joining us in moments. Plus, we'll tell you how you can donate and help the people of Syria if you want to. Remember, I think the average salary for a Syrian is like $30 a month. So just like $5, $10 could change their life, could dramatically help these people right now. We can all step up and help. We'll get to that. Plus, should we be banning social media for children, which is also these big media companies trying to prey on our children? Senator Josh Hawley speaking out about that. We'll hear from him a little bit later in the show. But first, time to get some free money. Get some stocks right now. So you can even get these 15 free stocks. Get some of this free money just by opening an account with Moomoo. And you could literally take the money that you make from these free stocks, and you could donate it to help the people of Syria. You could do that. So just for opening an account, you get free stocks. And then for making an initial deposit, you get 15 free stocks, up to 15 free stocks. Can be valued up to $32,000. So imagine just taking some of that money and being able to donate it to help people. But even if you don't want to donate it, you want to just sit on it while the market does its weird volatility thing, you can do that as well. So Moomoo is a $6 billion company. 18 million users around the world. They have one of the best trading experiences out there. Crypto, you can learn how to trade ETFs. Sorry, not crypto. You can learn how to trade ETFs, regular stocks, different commodity stocks, etc. And they have a very clean looking user interface and application on Mac, Windows, Android, iOS. The market right now is kind of crazy. So why not take advantage of these free stocks? Just open the account, get your initial deposit, get your free stocks, and just sit on it. Get your bonuses and all of that stuff and sit on it while this market is doing its crazy thing right now. You can celebrate Moomoo's 10th anniversary, by the way, with some free money by opening up your new account. Go to redacted.inc/Moomoo. Redacted.inc/Moomoo is how you can get your free stocks and start trading today. Now to the devastation in Syria and Turkey. Death toll climbing over 40, maybe even 50,000. Tens of thousands of people more will likely be found in the coming days. An absolutely tragic situation. But before all of this happened, Western sanctions dealt a crushing blow to the country of Syria. And our next guest, Kevork Almasian, is a Syrian journalist whose family is in Aleppo and has just written and produced videos specifically on why Western sanctions, removal of Western sanctions, is not even enough right now to help the people of Syria. Kevork joins us now. Kevork, I know you've not really slept in like 10 days. You've been organizing, trying to get out money and food and supplies to help the people of Syria. First, why removal of Western sanctions? That seems to be a major piece right now. People can't even donate money to Syria because of Western sanctions. Why the removal of that is not enough? Just take me through what you're experiencing right now.
Clayton, it was a really tough week for all Syrians. It was a huge devastation that inflicted upon the Syrian people after 12 years of war and draconian sanctions. This earthquake hit the hardest in the northern side of Syria, Aleppo, and also in the governorate of Jableh. We don't know yet the death toll, the correct death toll, because the Syrian side, the infrastructure was completely destroyed after this regime change war on Syria. And because of the sanctions, the Syrian side couldn't buy the necessary equipment, the necessary machinery, anything related to the health sector or to earthquakes, for example, during times of such emergency cases. I will give you an example, Clayton. The American sanctions and the European sanctions on Syria, they target any company, any third country company. So if you're in Bangladesh, if you're in Thailand, if you're in China, and you have a company there, and Syria wants to buy any basic material that can replace, for example, the water pumps, that can buy ambulances, that can buy any equipment that can be used in reconstruction or in the health sector or in the energy sector, is not allowed. So the United States comes, and the Europeans also come after any third country company, even if it's in Japan, anywhere around the world, and they tell them you're not allowed to sell any of these machineries to Syria, or we will sanction the company itself. So the companies were, although there is no legal basis for the Americans to bully these companies, but they are complying with these sanctions because they have business interests, right? So you cannot blame a company in China, although it is, for example, allied with Syria, that they don't want to deal with Syria because they have a huge business interests with the United States itself. So if you put it on a scale, these companies would prefer to do business with the United States and not with Syria, because Syria in all cases is a small country, and the trade exchange is very little compared to the United States. Now, after the earthquake, because there was a huge backlash, and I can assure you, Clayton, that there was a huge backlash on social media platforms. We have done a lot. We did pressure on the American administration that this is sadism. Like, imagine during these times there are still sanctions on Syria, and the American administration came under huge pressure. And in my opinion, they did the cosmetic, let's say, made a cosmetic decision, which is, okay, we are suspending some of the sanctions on Syria, and only for 6 months. That means all the talk that and for what they did, why did they suspend these sanctions? To deliver humanitarian aid. So our argument, which was, guys, you have to lift these sanctions so that we can deliver humanitarian aid. And the American side was saying, no, this is incorrect. We always exclude humanitarian aid from the sanctions, but this has proven to be wrong and false. And why the Americans suspended some of these sanctions if the humanitarian aid wasn't sanctions in the first place? You have to ask yourself this question. And despite that, this is not enough. I will tell you why. Because this is a very limited on suspension of these sanctions, and only for 6 months. And most of the major sectors in Syria, like, you're a government in Syria, and you have to provide fuel to your people. You have to provide food. You have to provide electricity and services. It's the job of the government to secure these basic necessities. And if you still sanction all the sectors of the Syrian government, how can the Syrian government function and deliver these basic necessities? For example, baby's milk, Clayton. Imagine that the baby's milk is there is a shortage of baby's milk in Syria, and Lebanese singer, and I will mention her name, Haifa Wahbi, she donated lots of baby's milk now to Syria, and she sent it on her own expense so that the kids and the babies in Syria can drink milk. So this is the state, the conditions in Syria, that there is huge draconian sanction imposed in order to devastate the Syrian people, into extent that they would say, okay, I prefer the demon to replace the current government if this demon can secure me food, medicine, and my kids would survive during these times, right? This is the main goal of these sanctions. It was pretty obvious from the days of Yugoslavia sanctions, Iraq sanctions, Libya sanctions. They were always meant against the people. And now, the American side, when they suspended these sanctions, you can make transactions to Syria, but not bank transactions, only through Western Union and MoneyGram that have branches in Syria, and only to your family members and to some individuals that have no links to any organization, or they don't work in the industry sector, etc. So you're able now to send like $100 to $100 to your family, but you can't make bank transactions and you can't send to anyone. If my father works in the public sector in Syria, they would not allow this transaction
and you've been and you've been trying to raise money, trying to get these campaigns set up, and they've been shut down. Do I understand you correctly on that?
Yes, I can assure you, Clayton, that me and a lot of people, we launched crowdfunding campaigns, whether on GoFundMe and other platforms. They were all suspended because if you mention Syria, and even on PayPal, by the way, if you mention Syria, the transaction will be blocked. And the GoFundMe blocked our campaign for 5 days. So these 5 days were the most important time so that we can deliver funds to Syria in order to buy the equipment, right? Because there was the rescue, this is the rescue time. After 5 days, people already died under the rubble, okay? And they unsuspended our campaign now after we submitted them document that says this funding will go to a French non-governmental organization in Syria, which has its registration number in France, and they have a branch in Syria. And only then they unsuspended. At the beginning, we submitted them a document that this funding will go to a Syrian non-governmental humanitarian organization, and they said, no, you cannot send any funding to any Syrian organization. It should be non-Syrian. It should have its registration number outside of Syria and should have its taxing number outside of Syria. And until we could bring this document, after 5 days, there is no alive person under the rubble anymore. So now we unsuspended this campaign, and we will deliver this aid to 2 organizations in Syria. One of them is Syria Unites Us in English, and the second one is We Are Superheroes. And they have they're working in Aleppo and in Jableh and in Hama, so the places that were hit by this earthquake. Maybe, guys, if you want to donate anything, even if it's $10, the campaign of the GoFundMe, probably Clayton, you put it in the description. Yes. We will deliver the funds. We will deliver the funds. Imagine, Clayton, we cannot even send this money through the banks. So 3 people here in Berlin, they have to go now to Syria on their own expense. They have to carry cash because each person can carry only 10,000 with them. So they have to carry cash in their hands and go to Syria and give it to these organizations, and we can get a bill and show to the people that we donated this money to this humanitarian organization.
This is awful. This is unbelievable. So PayPal, GoFundMe, these specific companies, these are the same ones, by the way, that shut down donations to truckers in Canada. There's a long laundry list of complaints against these companies. We on our show have been outspoken about canceling your PayPal account. If you still have a PayPal account, please, this is an example of the tyranny here that's in place. We will absolutely make sure we have links in the description for anyone that wants to donate to be able to help the people of Syria. So these rollback of sanctions is not enough. These small 6-month rollback of sanctions, because the major pieces are still in play, as you talk about, gasoline, all of those things. And it's been absolutely crushing for years for the people of Syria, right?
The UN Special Rapporteur, Dr. Professor Alena Duhan, she's specialized in reporting on the impact of these unilateral illegal sanctions on Syria. She mentioned all the sectors, from educational sector. Imagine students cannot go to school because there is no fuel for the buses to take them to school. There is no fuel to heat the schools. And because of the poverty that was inflicted on the Syrian people, 90% of the people are below poverty line because of these sanctions. Now, if you have a kid who is like 15 years old, the kids are going to work. They're going to beg in the streets. They're not going to schools, for example. You have the hospitals, Clayton. The government prioritizes 10 to 11 hours of electricity to the hospitals because this is the priority, right? You have to save lives. And imagine you have hospitals that have maximum 12 hours of electricity per day. And then when they have a surgery and the electricity is gone, they have to turn on the generators so that they can save the people undergoing surgery. And if there is no fuel to even turn on these generators, because the Americans occupy the Syria's oil fields in the east, on the eastern shore of the Euphrates. They say they are guarding it, right? Guarding it from who? They are exclusively holding this cart because they want to pressure on the Syrian government and tell them, look, we occupy your oil fields, we occupy your wheat fields, and now we have a card to play against you. And the Syrians aren't in a position to fight against the Americans, right? So there should be a popular demand in the United States. There should be pressure by the Americans. There should be more education to the Americans to know what their administration is doing. And this is not about Biden or Trump or Obama. All of them impose the same sanctions, and even more. Trump imposed more, and then Biden is imposing more. And Biden now is planning to impose further sanctions on Syria. Under what title? They say that the Syrian government is enriching its economy by selling drugs in the region, which in my opinion is the most silliest excuse ever. I mean, the largest drug dealing cartel in the world is the CIA itself, and now they're accusing the Syrian government of dealing with drugs to finance the economy in Syria. And if they impose sanctions, look to this sadism, Clayton. If Biden imposes these sanctions, they will impose direct sanctions on the medical sector in Syria, because they say that the Syrian government is using the medical sector to produce drugs. And that means we have to impose now sanctions on the health sector directly, because indirectly they were already under sanctions, and now they're targeting. What does that mean? We remember in the 90s when 500,000 children died in Iraq because of the sanctions. So I always say that the mindset that governed the United States for a long time, it's based on sadism. It's a psycho mentality that is inflicting so much pain on the people. And I don't say this out of exaggeration. We have studied these cases in different places and now in Syria, and we can see the direct consequences of these sanctions on the Syrian people. So my appeal to the Americans who are watching this video: send a letter to your representative, send them this video, talk to them, urge them to lift these sanctions. What has the Syrians done to the United States? Do Syria even pose a security threat to the United States? You guys are thousands of miles away from Syria. Syria has done nothing to the United States. It's just Israel that is pushing the American administration and telling it, no, Syria is a huge threat to the regional security. Syria is half of it is a rubble now. It doesn't pose any threat to anyone. We just want to reconstruct the country, because Syria was self-sufficient before the war in energy, in food, in medicine. Syria used to export medicine to the entire world. Syria used to export its cotton to the entire world. The best cotton in the world is in Syria. The best wheat in the world is in Syria. You know what the US did, Clayton, to the Syrian wheat? And I will show you how much psycho mentality is this. So in 2013, there is an institution in Syria called ICARDA. And in this ICARDA, they were developing the genetics of the wheat. So they developed the genetics of a wheat, the genetic codes of a wheat that is so resistant against the bugs, that the bugs come and eat this wheat, right? And the Americans, they had a problem in the United States in growing the wheat. So when these American-funded Islamists occupied that area, they took all the data and all the genetics of this genetic codes of this wheat, and they sent it to the United States. And you can Google this and you can be sure what I'm saying is true. And they solved this problem in the United States by stealing these codes, the genetic codes from Syria. And what did the Americans give Syria in return? The US aid, which is the CIA branch, they sent genetically modified wheat seed to the farmers in Syria, and they gave them this as a gift to the Syrian people, so that we ruin and destroy our best wheat in Syria, the agricultural sector in Syria, and they're telling us we're helping the Syrian people, we're giving them humanitarian aid. So they stole our good wheat, and they're giving the farmers where they occupy now in the eastern shore of the Euphrates genetically modified wheat, so that we destroy our own health and our own agricultural sector. This is sadism. How can you say anything except sadism?
No, it is absolute sadism. And so thank you, Kevork, for what you're doing. I want all of our audience today, please share this video out with a member of Congress, a representative, member of the Senate. Share it with a family member. Try to educate other Americans about what the United States and Western countries are doing to Syria. Please, we've got to end these sanctions in that country. It is destroying, the country's already destroyed. Further pushing it into the Stone Ages right now. Please, please, please. We'll have links in the description below to donate, to help to the people, not just because of the earthquake, but because of these devastating Western sanctions. So, Kevork, thank you so much for always being a voice of reason in all of this. We appreciate it. I know it's an incredibly difficult time. Thank you for taking a few minutes out to speak with us here on the show, and give our love from the Redacted audience to your family and to the people of Syria.
Thank you very much, Clayton, for this opportunity. And for those who want to donate, guys, you have to know the average salaries in Syria is $30. So imagine how much help you can present now to the Syrians if you donate just a $10 for an entire family.
Unbelievable. And we will too. Redacted will also be making big donations as well. So we'll have these links in the description, and please, please, please donate and help. Thank you so much, Kevork. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So thanks so much, Kevork. We really appreciate it. And, again, we'll have links in the description of this video. So please, if you want to donate $5, $10, whatever you can to help the people who've just been absolutely destroyed because of what's been happening with Western sanctions and this earthquake. So it's just really, really awful what the West has been doing here. So you can step up and help if you like. Again, the description will have those links for you to check that out. We've got more news to get to here on your Thursday. So let's do it. Let's talk about this story. Here's a story that I absolutely love. Republican Senator Josh Hawley has introduced a bill to ban social media for children under the age of 16. This is pretty crazy. Here's the headline. To ban social media for under 16. The bill, called the Making Age Verification Technology Uniform, Robust, and Effective Act. Love the names of these things. It's called MATURE is the name of the act. Making Age Verification Technology Uniform, Robust, and Effective is the name of it. It would require platforms.
Because right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, because right now they all have I can't think of the word, a policy that you have to be 13 to create an account. So is he just saying increase the age to 16, or is that different? Because you already can't create it. You're technically, I know kids do, but you technically cannot have an account on any social media until you're 13.
Well, and many of them, yeah, they do. So no, now this would absolutely make you have a government issued ID, which you can get at age, I guess you get it at age 16. I mean, you can get a passport any age, right? So my 3-year-old had a passport, right? So you'd have to actually be able to hold up a government issued ID in order to do this. But in order to get approved for it, you'd have to be 16. So they would verify your age on the ID. You hold it up, you verify, good, now you're in. So I love this idea. To do this, users would be required to provide their full legal name, their date of birth, their government issued identification to verify their information. So here's how Senator Josh Hawley explained it last night on Hannity. Watch.
Talk about this, what you would like to have an age limit as it relates to social media. Tell us about that.
Well, here's the thing. I think we ought to say to these social media companies, Sean, quit targeting our kids. Let's set an age threshold, 16. You got to be 16 before the social media companies can let you open up an account, before they can go after you. We ought to give parents some control here, put them back in the driver's seat. I got 3 kids. Parents all over the country would love to know that these companies cannot target their children, cannot let them open up accounts until they're 16 years of age. Let's protect our kids when they're at their most vulnerable.
And what's amazing today, I think the timing of this is hilarious, actually. YouTube sent out a series of emails letting users know that there's a new way that they can watch YouTube for kids. YouTube Kids app. It's been around for a while, but now it's available on different smart televisions. So YouTube for Kids is now available, so you can have the parental control of YouTube without all of the other stuff.
I've actually seen them putting that in cars now. In the Android Play, there's cars that have video players in the back seats now, and they're equipped with YouTube for Kids.
YouTube for Kids, yeah. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. My 6-year-old. All of my kids liked YouTube for Kids, and inside the app you could set age limits, so you could let them know the age. Like, okay, my daughter is 3, so they'll only be able to see content from between the ages of 3 and 4 years old, and it's like Peppa Pig content. You know, it's like cartoons. It's like little, you know, it's like little clips. Or it's like Peppa Pig and whatever. And then as they get a little older, you can adjust the age if you want, and they'll see whatever. So my little girl loves watching other girls play, like do things with dolls, and then she recreates it and plays with dolls herself, and like does what she sees them do with the dolls, and she does her own stuff. So you can set those age limits on that. So we don't give her actual YouTube. We give her like the YouTube Kids version of it. So that's one thing. But the legislation would hold social media companies accountable by creating an audit process, according to Senator Josh Hawley, and a private right of action. Hawley said that this bill would be, you know, also a way to really study, to commission a report and study social media with a full longitudinal, I can't even say it today. Longitudinal. Why can't I say that today? Can you guys say it?
Longitudinal?
Yes, longitudinal. Because I'm saying it, I'm like, I know that sounds right, but then it seems right. I'm reading it right, but then when I say it, it sounds like I'm saying it wrong. You know what I mean? Longitudinal. Anyway, longitudinal. To fund a longitudinal study to track social media's effects on children over 10 years old. So they're going to fund a study to find out what its long-term effects are. But we already have plenty of data on how bad this stuff is. Particularly, I mean, we want to talk about pornography for children. And you think about all of these kids. I mean, I'm reading a great book right now, this on Decoding Boys, about young boys going through, you know, as they mature. And it's awful. I mean, this social media stuff and having access to smartphones constantly is awful. It really, really is. So if we can reduce, eliminate like Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, all of that crap, just get it out of their hands. I just say take it away from them permanently, delete it off their phone so they can't use it altogether.
Well, and you have these companies that have meetings specifically, how do we reach these kids? How do we reach kids with our advertising? That is like one of the demographics that they want the most. And so I would say I would be cool with the blocking it till 16 and then not allowing the companies to advertise to them until they're like 25. Like you can't run any ads on these people until they're not, because their brains are still developing until they're 25. And so that's 30. A way to program them. That's like their 30. Yeah. That's like their main objective. How can we program these kids?
You know, in this book, it's actually pretty amazing. Teenage boys' brains, well, girls too, but teenage boys' brains specifically, like the melanin that it wraps around the synapses, basically. You know, it's not until you're like 18 where they can really know the difference between right and wrong in big ways. Like she makes the point in the book. She's like, do you ever notice, like, we can literally have conversations with our children about not answering the door from strangers, you know, like if just don't do it. Just don't do it. You can only open the door for people, you know, these 5 people you're allowed to open the door. And then one afternoon, someone buzzes the buzzer and I open the door for him. And my parents are like, what are you doing? Open the door for him. And he's like, oh, I couldn't understand him. He was saying something, so I let him in. It's like, what? So how do they do something so smart and they do something so stupid 5 minutes later? It's because those synapses literally aren't done being developed yet. So the frontal cortex is not fully developed to know and fully, know the difference between right and wrong in that situation. Anyway, I think and then also just the problems with body image and depression and anxiety and all of those things. If you think about it, the study found that approximately a new study that just came out recently found that 57% of female students surveyed reported persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. 25% said they had a suicide plan in place. 25%? 10% attempted it in 2021. In 2011, 13% of boys, 19% of girls said they had seriously considered it. Huge increase from those years. And what do we have from then? We have social media. We have ubiquitous smartphones. And it's almost become so important, like parents, are sort of expected to have their kids have these devices for like school pickups and all that kind of stuff. I remember when I was dropping off our kids or trying to pick up my kids from school a few years ago, and my girl was in preschool. My littlest one, she was in preschool, and I was picking her up. And I came to the traffic circle, and they're like, oh, you just got to text her. You should call her. She should be out here or whatever. I'm like, she's in preschool. She doesn't have a phone. Are you kidding me? She doesn't know how to text. I'm not texting her. What am I supposed to text her a picture of a bunny? She doesn't have a phone. What am I? But we expect this now. But just think
about these kids. It's like they have these phones. They're on them all the time. They're on social media. They go to school. In the United States, this is the case. I don't know if it is over there as well, but they don't learn anything in life skills. They learn math. They learn things that, they could use, but it's not like they're not learning how to balance a checkbook. They're not learning how to cook meals. It's like a lot of these kids are going to blindly be wandering off into society with no idea how to live on their own, pay their bills, do anything, which is making them stay home with their parents even longer. I know some states have increased child support payments if a kid is in college until they're 26 years old. So it's like they keep either living longer with their parents, or they're just going to be out there wandering around aimlessly, not sure what to do with themselves because they've not learned any life skills.
No, and then they're comparing themselves to what they see on social media, right? I know it sounds trite for us as in our 40s and 50s to say that, right? But it's true. Eating disorders, depression, anxiety, gender dysphoria. Why do you see this massive rise in gender dysphoria? And surgeries, trans surgeries and all, for kids, because it's all over TikTok, right? And arguably, and many people have called it that, TikTok and Snapchat, basically psychological operations, like psyops, training a whole, consistency of drones to do certain things. And then you have the porn side of it, which is equally as damaging, specifically for young boys too, because they see. Did you know, this is an unbelievable statistics, and I can't believe this, but it's true, that erectile dysfunction is now on the rise among young boys. Think about that for a second. Yeah, think about that. Young boys, erectile dysfunction, and why is that? It's because they're watching so much pornography that they then, in real life, it's not anywhere near as exciting or thrilling. So what they're seeing in online stuff is so much worse, and they then in real life can't get aroused. So guess what? Wait until the pharmaceutical companies start swooping in to, you know what I mean? It used to be Bob Dole, had ED. No. Now it's going to be your 16-year-old. Talk to your child.
And I'm wondering if it's already. I'm wondering if it's already somewhat responsible because they've got so many kids on, psychotropics and, Ritalin and Adderall and stuff that could also be leading to it. And it's all of this stuff is the pharmaceutical company's wet dream because all these kids are self-diagnosing, which then they can go in and they're like, I think I have this. And they're like, okay, put them on this drug. And then what does the pharmaceutical company have? They have a bunch of kids on residual drugs because when you change your gender or whatever, when you have trans surgery, you're on medication for the rest of your life if you want to maintain it. And the pharmaceutical companies are like, cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah, because one of the things in this study was attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. So, that's coming from these devices. It's coming from just sitting there scrolling through TikTok. I deleted that stuff off my phone. And, I know it's funny because, it's not funny. And maybe we should pull it off there, actually. I don't know. We post our show there because we want people to come over here to hang out with us for a long time, and not have this attention deficit disorder. So I don't know. These companies piss me off, and I almost want to just cancel our accounts altogether over there. I don't use it. I stopped using it. I installed it just so we could post some longer form clips of our show on there. And I don't even know who watches them. I don't even know if anyone's watching them. So, I don't know. I feel guilty about it. It's okay, we put it out there because you're supposed to be on all platforms to attract people here to the show. But if we're part of the problem, should we just delete that? I don't know.
I kind of look at it like this. It's like in an echo chamber where you're only seeing the things that they want you to see. Every once in a while, if you see something that you resonate with, it can wake people up. Even if it's just one, I've seen certain videos where I'm like, holy cow, that person is right. I'll look them up. I go down a rabbit hole and I learn something. So it's I still feel like it's beneficial to put good content on those platforms to try to educate people, to make them critical think critical thinkers, so that they get away from those platforms.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'd be great. Like, we post this on TikTok, and then someone sees it, and they're like, "Hey, thank you for this. I'm going to delete TikTok." Like, that would be great, actually. Exactly. I'm like, great, we did our job. Now come on over here to YouTube and hang out and you know, be educated about what we're covering in the news. So you actually put in some time, attention, and effort, not just 30-second clips. I don't know. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Do you agree with Senator Hawley's bill? And also, by the way, we just saw a bunch of states announcing new state restrictions for pornography. In fact, Louisiana has already done this, but a number of states are now installing laws that you have to show age verification of 18, and you have to prove through a driver's license or passport or something, like hold it up to the camera, and it has to be approved before you can ever log into any of those things. And so Louisiana has already done it, and a couple of other states have already done that. And I think that's great as well. Like, force people to go to their wallet. Like, they really want this crap that's going to mess with their brains. They really want this stuff. Good. Go to your wallet and get out your driver's license and put your face up to a camera that a company like Pornhub is going to then take and store in a database or whatever, and verify that you want to be watching that crap.
Or they could just make a Pornhub for kids. That weeds out all the. Download the Pornhub for Kids app.
The Peppa Pig Pornhub.
It's like really soft.
Oh
porn.
My God. Oh boy. All right. Well, that's going to do it for the show today. Thank you guys so much for subscribing, being a part of our community here. We do have a community where you can become a VIP if you'd like. You can support our show by going to redacted.inc. We have a community area where you can click on to become a VIP, become a Redacted Rebel VIP for the price of a cup of coffee once a month. You can support independent journalism and support what we do here. And if you're on Rumble right now, just click the big red button so you can join our locals community. Rumble has it built right in. So to all of our friends on Rumble, we love you. Thank you guys so much for becoming a part of the Redacted Rebel VIP community, where we post exclusive content, Rebel-only content that you can see over there. So thank you guys so much for joining us here on this Thursday. We'll be back here. We have a special episode tomorrow. We're going to be live tomorrow on Friday night. So hopefully you can join us live tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time, right here, whether you're on YouTube or Rumble or whatever streaming platform you choose, or on Twitter as well. Grover likes Twitter. So we have a lot of people that watch us on Twitter as well. Much love to all of you guys. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye now.
Are you worried about